Alina was just 18, but her eyes looked older, like they had seen too much pain. She worked at a small bakery on a busy street. Every day she cleaned the floors, served bread, and smiled at people who never looked back at her. At night, when the bakery closed, she didn't go home. She had no home. She slept in the dark storage room behind the ovens, surrounded by empty flour sacks and the smell of burnt sugar. She was an orphan. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was only 9. After that, she moved from one shelter to another. Some people were kind, most were not. But Alina never complained. She learned to live with pain. She learned to stay quiet. And most of all, she learned not to expect anything from life. The bakery owner, Mr. Qasim, gave her work and a place to sleep. He didn't pay much, but it was enough for her to buy soap, clothes from the street market, and sometimes a chocolate bar on her birthday. Alina never asked for more. She wore simple clothes, always clean, always plain. She tied her hair in a braid and never wore makeup. She didn't know anything about fashion or parties. Her world was small, but her heart was big. Some regular. Customers noticed her kindness. She always remembered their favorite bread. She offered free tea to the old man who sat outside. She gave leftover food to the stray dog that waited near the back door every night. But most people didn't even know her name. One cold morning, something unusual happened. A black luxury car stopped outside the bakery. 3 rich-looking men stepped out. Their clothes were expensive, their watches shiny, and their attitudes loud. One of them, taller than the others, walked in with dark sunglasses on, even though it was cloudy outside. That man was Zayan Khan, the son of one of the city's richest families. Everyone knew his name, and everyone knew his reputation. He was famous for parties, fast cars, and a long list of broken hearts. Newspapers called him a reckless millionaire. People whispered that he ruined every girl who came close. Alina didn't recognize him. She rarely watched TV or read gossip magazines. For her, he was just another rude customer who looked too proud to say thank you. Mr. Qasim's eyes widened when he saw Zayan. He quickly told Alina, "Serve them fresh cake and hot tea. Be careful, they're important." Alina picked up a tray and walked towards the table where Zayan and his friends sat. She gently placed the teacups down, but before she could put the cake on the table, Zayan pushed the tray hard. The cups fell. Hot tea spilled. The cake smashed on the floor. "You call this service?" Zayan shouted. His voice was loud. Everyone in the bakery turned to look. Alina stood still, her hands shaking, her face pale. Zayan looked her up and down and laughed. "Who hired this servant? She looks like she came from the streets." His friends laughed with him. Alina didn't say a word. She bent down, cleaned the mess, and walked away. That night she cried quietly in the storage room. She didn't cry because of the insult. She had heard worse. She cried because in that moment she felt like she was nothing, just a shadow in a world full of light. But the next morning, something even more shocking happened. Mr. Qasim called her into his office. He looked nervous. He avoided her eyes. "There's a proposal for you," he said slowly. Alina blinked. What kind of proposal? A marriage proposal. From Zayan Khan's family. Alina felt like the floor moved under her feet. "Is this a joke?" she asked, her voice small. "No. They want you to marry Zayan. They say it's important. For their image." Alina couldn't believe what she was hearing. Just yesterday, Zayan had insulted her like she was dirt. Now his family wanted her to be his wife? She stood frozen. Questions ran through her mind. Why would a rich, cruel man want to marry a poor orphan like her? What were they hiding? What kind of trap was this? And most of all, what would happen if she said no? Alina couldn't sleep that night. The bakery's storage room, where she usually found quiet, now felt like a prison. Her heart raced. Her mind kept going back to the shocking words from Mr. Qasim. Zayan Khan's family wants you to marry him. She thought it must be a mistake, or maybe a cruel joke. Why would a rich, powerful family want an orphan girl? A girl who served tea, who wore second-hand clothes, who slept next to sacks of flour? The next morning she went to work as usual. She swept the floor, washed the trays, and kept her head low. But inside, she was burning with questions. At lunch, Mr. Kasim called her again. This time, his voice was firmer. "Alina, they are serious. The Khan family sent a lawyer. They want to arrange the marriage as soon as possible." Alina stood still. "But I don't want this. I don't even know them." Mr. Kasim looked away. "Sometimes in life, we don't get to choose." She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you pushing this? You always said I was like a daughter to you." He sighed and then he said the truth. "I was in debt, Alina. The bakery almost shut down last year. Zayan's father offered me money if I gave your guardianship to them. I signed the papers 2 months ago." Alina gasped. "You sold me?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She backed away like he was a stranger. "I trusted you," she whispered. "You gave me food, a place to sleep, and now you gave me away like I'm nothing." Mr. Qasim's face showed guilt, but not regret. "I had no choice, and neither do you." Alina ran out of the bakery. She didn't know where to go. She had no home, no family, no one who would help her. She sat in the nearby park, hugging her knees as people walked by without looking at her. She thought about escaping the city, but how far could she go with no money and no one to protect her? By evening, 2 men in black suits arrived at the bakery. Mr. Qasim called her back. "They're here to talk," he said. The men were cold and professional. One of them gave her a document and said, "This is your marriage agreement. You will marry Mr. Zayan Khan within 10 days. Alina shook her head. "I don't agree." One of the men gave a small smile. "You don't need to. Your guardian already signed, and legally he had the right." Her hands trembled as she held the paper. She felt trapped, not just in a bad situation, but in a life that was never hers to control. That night she sat by the window in the storage room. Her dinner lay untouched. Her eyes were on the moon, full and far away, just like the life she had dreamed of. She thought about her mother's gentle voice, her father's warm hands. She remembered how they once told her, "You can be anything you want." But now she was being forced to be a wife to a man who didn't respect her, who had insulted her in front of a crowd. And worst of all, she had no way out. The next morning, a box arrived for her, full of designer clothes, jewelry, and wedding items. She didn't even open it. Mr. Qasim said, "The Khan family is powerful. Don't make them angry." Alina looked at him with cold eyes. "I'm not afraid for myself. I'm only afraid of what they might turn me into." She stood up and walked back into the bakery. Her face was quiet, but her heart was screaming. 10 days passed like a storm in Alina's life. Everything around her changed, but inside she felt frozen. The bakery was no longer her home. Mr. Qasim avoided her eyes. He acted like everything was normal, but Alina knew. She had been traded, not protected. She was moved to a guest house owned by the Khan family, where she stayed under watch. The room was big but empty, just like her heart. Fancy clothes were laid out for her every day, but she never touched them. Makeup artists and dress designers came and went, talking to her like she was a statue. The wedding was being planned like a business event, not a celebration of love. Zayan hadn't said a single word to her since the day at the bakery. He didn't visit. He didn't call. She only saw him once, in a newspaper photo where he smiled at a party surrounded by other women. Alina looked at that picture for a long time. "Why me?" she whispered. Her wedding day arrived with no joy, no laughter, and no blessings. She wore a dress worth more than she had ever seen, but her eyes had no sparkle. When she reached the wedding venue, a grand hall filled with gold, flowers, and strangers, her heart felt heavy. Hundreds of guests were there. Cameras flashed. Journalists whispered, but Alina stood quietly, her hands cold, her feet shaking. Zayan arrived late as expected. He walked in wearing a designer sherwani, sunglasses, and a bored look on his face. He didn't glance at her. He walked straight to the stage and sat down like he was at another business deal. The wedding rituals began. The Maulvi asked Alina, Do you accept this marriage? Her lips trembled. For a second, she thought about running away, about saying no. But then she remembered the contract, the threats, the power of the Khan family. She slowly whispered, "Yes." Zayan said yes too, without even looking. At her, just like that, she became Mrs. Alina Zayan Khan. No one clapped, no one smiled. Even the air in the room felt cold. After the ceremony, photographers rushed forward. Zayan finally turned to her and whispered, "Smile, just for the camera." She gave a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. In that moment, she didn't feel like a bride. She felt like a prisoner dressed in gold. At the wedding dinner, people praised the beautiful match, but Alina sat quietly beside her new husband. He talked to his friends, laughed, and acted like she wasn't even there. Later that night, they arrived at the Khan mansion. It was huge, grand, and full of silence. Zayan showed her to a room, big, beautiful, but empty. He threw a card on the table and said, "Here's your credit card. Spend whatever you want. Just don't get in my way." She looked up at him. "Why did you marry me?" He smirked. "Because my father wanted me to, and because I wanted to prove something." "Prove what?" she asked softly. He turned to leave. "That even an orphan girl can wear diamonds, but it won't change who she really is." The door shut behind him. Alina sat on the edge of the bed, her wedding dress still on. Her hands trembled, her soul bruised. There were no flowers in her room. No music, no love, only silence. Days passed, but Alina's life felt like it had stopped. The grand mansion, with its shining floors and high walls, felt colder than the bakery storage room where she once slept. Zayan never stayed home. He came late, left early, and barely looked at her. They didn't eat meals together, they didn't speak, they didn't even argue. It was as if Alina didn't exist in his world. But Alina wasn't weak, just silent. She watched, she listened, and deep inside she knew something wasn't right. One evening she overheard a phone call. Zayan was in his study, and the door was slightly open. Alina had come to return a book she borrowed from the library. She stopped when she heard his voice, angry and sharp. "She's just a formality, Dad," Zayan said on the phone. "You wanted me to marry, I did. Now leave me alone." There was a pause, then Zayan added, "I don't care if she's from that orphan center. I just want access to the properties. That's what matters." Alina's eyes widened. Property? Orphan center? What was he talking about? She quickly moved away before he saw her. That night she sat by the window, heart pounding. She thought about her past, her parents, the car crash and the years in the orphanage, and then Mr. Qasim who took her in. It all seemed too simple, too clean. But now, a storm of doubt filled her heart. The next day she visited the mansion's library. Not for a book, but for answers. She found old files stacked in a hidden drawer. She pulled them out one by one. Most were business documents, until she found one file that froze her blood. It was her orphanage record, her full name, Alina Raymond Khan. Khan. She opened more pages. Her father's name, Raymond Khan, was written in bold. He had once owned lands that were later taken over by Zayan's family. Alina gasped. She wasn't just any orphan girl. She was the daughter of the man Zayan's father had betrayed. Her father's lands had been taken after his death in a fake legal case. Alina had no idea because she was a child. But now everything made sense. The forced marriage, the sudden proposal, the cold treatment. Zayan didn't want a wife. He wanted control. Through her, he now had the legal right to claim her late father's properties. Tears rolled down Alina's cheeks, not because she was sad, but because she finally knew the truth. That night, when Zayan came home, she waited for him in the living room. For the first time, her eyes were not soft. They were strong. "I know everything," she said calmly. Zayan looked annoyed. "What are you talking about?" She held up the file. "About my father. About the land. About why you really married me. He didn't speak. For a moment his silence was louder than a scream. You used me, she said. You thought I was weak. But you forgot. I'm his daughter, and I won't let you win. Zion's face changed. You think you can fight me? I won't fight, she replied. But I will not be silent anymore. Alina's words hit Zion like a slap. For the first time he couldn't speak. He looked at her, really looked, and saw something different. She was no longer the quiet girl from the bakery. She was a woman who had found her voice. I don't care about your threats, Alina said, placing the file on the table. I know what you did. I know this marriage was a plan, but I won't let you win. Zion clenched his fists. You're still my wife, and you live under my roof. For now, she replied softly, but not forever. She walked away, without fear, leaving him alone with the truth. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. Her heart was heavy but not broken. She stood by the window and whispered to herself, if my father lost everything, I will win it back. With dignity, not revenge. The next morning, she made a plan. She visited Mr. Qasim at the bakery. He was surprised to see her. I need your help, she said. You once saved me. I need to save myself now. She told him everything. The forced marriage, the truth. About her father, the stolen land. Mr. Qasim listened with tears in his eyes. I always knew you were born for more than just struggle, he said. He gave her the number of an old lawyer, a man who once worked for her father but had gone silent after the accident. Alina met the lawyer in secret. When she showed him the file, he gasped. These documents, I thought they were destroyed. Alina looked at him with hope. Can we get my father's land back? The lawyer nodded slowly. It will take time and courage. But yes, you have a chance. A real one. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Zion was restless. He had expected Alina to cry, to beg, to break, but instead she was growing stronger. He started noticing things about her, the way she carried herself, the quiet strength in her eyes, the dignity in her silence. One evening, he saw her praying. The sunlight touched her face gently. Something stirred in his chest, a strange feeling he hadn't felt in years, but Zion was too proud to say anything. Days passed and Alina worked silently with the lawyer. She also began helping poor children near the mansion, using the money Zion had left on the credit card. Not for clothes, not for gold, but for books, food, and school fees for the helpless. Zion watched her from the window one day as she gave bread to a hungry boy. The boy smiled and hugged her. She smiled back, not like someone's wife, but like someone's hope. And something strange happened. For the first time, Zion felt ashamed. Zion sat in his study, the same place where he once spoke about Alina like she was nothing. But now the silence felt different. He had always believed that money, power, and freedom were all he needed. But every time he saw Alina helping the poor, smiling at children, or speaking calmly even when others shouted, he felt something inside shift. He began remembering things, his childhood, his mother, and how kind she used to be before she passed away. She used to say, real strength is in kindness, not control. Zion had forgotten that, but Alina reminded him without even trying. One evening he walked into the garden and found Alina reading to a small group of street kids. They sat on the grass, listening to her simple words like they were magic. Zion stood quietly, just watching. A little girl looked up and said, Uncle, do you want to read too? Alina turned around, surprised to see him. For the first time, Zion smiled. Not his fake party smile, but a real one. I don't know how to read stories like her, he said softly. The children laughed. Alina gave a small smile but said nothing. Later that night, he knocked on her door. She opened it slowly. I want to talk, he said. Alina stayed silent but stepped aside to let him in. He sat down and looked around her room. It was simple but neat. There were books, a prayer mat, and pictures of her parents. I never planned to hurt you, he said, But I did, and I'm sorry. Alina was shocked. Zayan Khan saying sorry? It almost didn't feel real. I know why you married me, she said. You don't have to pretend. Zayan nodded. Yes, it was about land. And control. I hated my father's rules. I thought marrying you would make me free, but I was wrong. Alina looked at him with calm eyes. You used me, but I used your money to help people. Zayan smiled faintly. I know. I've been watching. There was a pause. I want to change, Alina, he whispered. I don't know how, but I want to try. She looked at him, not with anger, but with caution. Change doesn't come from words, Zayan. It comes from actions. Zayan stood up. Then let me show you. From that day, something surprising began to happen. Zayan started joining Alina when she went to the orphanage. He sat with the children, he listened to their stories. He even donated books and clothes quietly, without showing off. People in the neighborhood were shocked. Is that really Zayan Khan? They whispered. His friends laughed at him. You've become soft, they teased. But Zayan didn't care. One day he even visited the lawyer Alina had been working with. I want to fix my father's mistakes, he said. Tell me what I can do. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Why the sudden change of heart? Zayan sighed. Because I married a woman who has nothing, but gave me everything. The sun was setting behind the mansion, casting a soft golden glow across the garden. Alina sat on the bench with her hands folded, eyes fixed on the horizon. A lot had changed in just a few weeks. Zayan was no longer the same man she had married. He still had his pride, but now there was a strange gentleness in his words. He spoke less but listened more. He didn't order. He asked, and most surprising of all, he was trying. But Alina's heart still carried scars. Forgiveness wasn't easy. Trust was even harder. One evening, Zayan called her to the study. She walked in carefully, not knowing what to expect. He handed her a brown envelope. These are the papers, he said quietly. She opened it and saw the legal documents. It was everything. Her father's land, her rights, and her full ownership returned. You don't need to stay in this marriage to get what belongs to you, Zayan said. You're free to go or stay. It's your choice now. Alina stared at the papers. Her hands shook. She had dreamed of this moment. Freedom, justice, power to walk away. And now it was in front of her. But instead of speaking, she asked him a question. Why did you really change, Zayan? He looked into her eyes and replied, because for the first time in my life, I saw someone who didn't want anything from me. You didn't try to change me. You just showed me what it means to be human again. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from pain, but from the strange peace she felt inside. She looked at the papers again, then slowly placed them back on the table. I don't want your land, she said softly. I just wanted to be seen and respected. Zayan stepped closer. Then let me earn that, not as a millionaire, not as your husband, but as a man who wants to start over. Alina nodded slowly. From that day, their relationship was no longer a trap. It became a journey. Zayan started working with Alina to build a school for orphans using her father's land. They named it Raymond Hope Academy, after her father. The mansion that once felt cold slowly turned into a home. Laughter returned. Warm food was shared at one table, and Zayan began smiling with his eyes, not just his lips. Months later, on their wedding anniversary, Zayan brought her a simple gift. Not gold, not diamonds. Just a photo frame with their picture and a note that read, from strangers to partners, to something real. Alina smiled. Not because she was rich now, not because she won something, but because she had turned pain into purpose and changed a man with nothing but truth. And that was everything.